Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of the Team Deakins Podcast, a collection of informal conversations between Roger and James Deakins and a guest. We never know where the conversation will take us, so listen in and see where it goes. This episode is sponsored by Aperture, a premier manufacturer of LED lighting with the industry's greatest variety of fixtures for your complete lighting needs. Aperture recently announced the new Storm family of lights. With LED white light quality that matches natural daylight and classic tungsten bulbs, plus extreme low-end dimming while maintaining color quality. Discover more about the new Storm lights and the complete Aperture lighting ecosystem at aperture.com. Today we're speaking with a production designer. His credit list is long and includes Wicked, The Greatest Showman, Interstellar, and Public Enemies. We're pleased to welcome Nathan Crowley. Nathan, thank you for doing this.
Hi, welcome.
Pleasure. It's very nice to meet you both.
We'd love to start with our question. How did you get to where you are today? Where did you start out in life? Did you think you wanted to be a dentist first and then found this?
What was your favorite pub in Islington?
Roger's getting down to the
the Island Queen. Come on, the only one to
there you go.
on Knoll Road. I grew up in Islington. Well, until I was about 12, and then we went to South London because my father was an architect, and he wanted us to live in a glass house, as all architects do, all modernists do. So. I had to leave Islington, which was a great shame. My mum was a painter, so it was an odd household. So from there, I ended up. Where did I go? I went down to Brighton Art School, which was great. I came out of that.
Sorry, why Brighton, and what was so good about it? Why Brighton, and why art college?
Well, I always loved to draw. I ended up doing a fine art year or foundation year in Sir John Cass Art School in Whitechapel. And that led me to, I applied for architecture at Kingston and got in. And both my parents had been to Kingston and decided I needed to get out of London and probably away from my family. So it was right. And actually the deeper story is I went to Brighton by accident because I went down there for a great night out, and I broke down on the level, which is the big flat area near the Royal Pavilion in my Beetle. So I went to sleep. I woke up and got out, and the art school was opposite where I broke down, and it said open day. So I thought, I'll go in there. And I met I met the head of, it was called Interior Architecture. I think my degree ended up being in three-dimensional design, who I really liked. And I thought he was a cool guy, and it was like, is there still time to apply? So he let me in after seeing my work. And that's it was by mistake. And that really is how I ended up. It's the same with the film industry. I ended up there in the film industry by complete mistake. I didn't even know you could get a job in the film industry. It didn't occur to me. I mean, of course I went to Leicester Square and I saw all the great movies, and I love movies, but my dad, we end up watching endless war films on a Sunday. But, so that sort of led to me ending up work drafting. I did a lot of drafting for architects after art school because those are the jobs you could get in the 80s. There's a lot of business architecture going on. So I got a job drafting in Bethnal Green for a big architecture firm. And frankly, it was just so dull. I had to, there was no humor. There was no fun, there's no passion. So I quit and had some friends in Los Angeles. So I went to Los Angeles. Well, I guess the real story is I was thinking I'd be a secondhand car dealer and buy some sports cars in LA and drive them to Florida and ship them to England and sell them on the docks. But anyway, I ended up in LA and I bumped into a guy from Brighton in a bar opposite Paramount. And he said, it was Joe Hodges. He said, I just got a job on this film called Hook. And they're desperate for people who can draft. And he said, I remember your work. You can draft. Like, come and meet the designer. Wow. So it was totally by just mishap and luck. And Norman Garwood, who was a designer on Hook, who'd done Brazil, I think he liked football when he hired me. So,
Yeah. Great. Wow.
but what I did know when I remember, because they were in the MGM, the old MGMs, it was TriStar at the time. And I remember my first day, and I walked down the main drag of MGM, the old MGM, and there was stage 30, stage 27, stage 15, and they were building like hook shit on stage. I think it was 27, and they built a water tank. Hook shit was like up to the grid. The water tank was leaking because all water tanks leak. We all know that. And and then it was chaos. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is where I belong. I belong here.
Wow.
So that's, just a sort of. And then how did I actually learn how to make films? At the end of Hook, I knew nothing, and I'd just been working on Tinkerbell's oversized furniture because there was very little CG back then. So everything had to be huge for her. So that was fun. And then Norman came to see me in my drafting room and said, you don't know anyone in Hollywood, do you? I said, I don't know anyone in Hollywood. And he said, I'll get you a job next door on this film called Bram Stoker's Dracula. So,
Wow.
so he got me a job. Norman was just brilliant. And so I went next door. Dante Ferretti at the time was designing it. And he didn't end up designing it. Tom Sanders ended up designing it. I was sort of in this interim. So I was sort of assigned to second unit with Roman Coppola. And really, that's how I learned filmmaking. I spent 11 months doing second unit as their art director, like kind of learning all in-camera tricks, which actually I still use today. Still a passion, puppeteering, miniatures, mirrors, ghosting. I just love it.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started. So
Wow. It's great to hear just sort of chance. You might have been in car dealership if you hadn't have met your friend in the pub opposite.
So I bought an old Porsche 912 when I was in LA, and I drove it across the States, and its number plate was 007. I was very keen.
Oh, great.
23-year-old. And I shipped it to my friend, and he sold it. But we were really bad secondhand car dealers. So, so I was very lucky because I was very low on cash when I got that job on Hook.
It's pretty amazing too, though. You started on such big movies.
Yeah.
Maybe you had a little part, but it was a big movie. The rest of us started on these tiny movies.
Build up to it. And then, but I'm really interested because we watched, I think it was the first film you designed. We watched the other night called Sweetie Barrett, which is like far from Hook, right? It's a wonderful film set in Ireland, right? I don't know which part where it was actually shot, but it's a wonderful film. And it's really interesting. It was your first film, but it's got so many people in it.
Yeah.
It was their first film.
Like Cillian
Murphy and Andrew Scott and Andy Serkis and Brendan Gleeson. They were all kind of like
nobodies,
really young, right?
Yeah, we're all nobodies. What happened? So what happened after what happened is, I sort of had this incredible sort of fortune again. Not that Sweetie Barrett was unfortunate particularly, but I kind of, after Hook, I was like, I sort of teamed up with the designer, Tom Sanders, who would, I'd go on films with. So he made me an art director pretty quickly. I had there's a bit missing in between because I did actually work for people like Abel Ferrara and stuff like that. So I kind of had this sort of crazy film education. And then Tom took me on Braveheart as an art director to Ireland, which was fantastic. And then I decided I needed to, it was at that point I thought, I've got to design. I want to be in charge of the film. I can't actually, it's not in me to do other people's design. And so Morgan O'Sullivan, who ran Ardmore Studios in Dublin, said, well, why don't you stay here? Because there's lots of little films here. There's no designers here. So, so he set me up in an office at Ardmore as the sort of the young designer, and they liked the name Crowley. They didn't, they thought they could make me Irish.
Make you a local, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how that's how we got into Sweetie.
Wow.
So you say you don't like to do other people's designs. How do you reconcile that with working with a director? Because aren't you kind of doing his design?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a completely fair question. You have to, I don't necessarily see it like that. I mean, I worked with Christopher Nolan for 20 years, and I'd always I'd always go into his house months and months before anything happened and try and help him visualize the script. So I came from a very sort of privileged position of him needing imagery. But yeah, that's a fair question. A lot of people have a very specific view of how a film should look. A lot of directors always very specific landscape view, or because there's a lot of emotion in what that might look like. And yeah, I mean, I guess what I really meant is I needed to be the designer so I could be in charge of translating that script for them and work with them. And I guess I needed to be in charge of my department. I mean, I guess that's how it goes. Yeah, and it's always been, you always have that sort of, the worst film you can get on is where your design taste does this with a director, mismatches, and that can be. So you have to be very careful. You guys know this perfectly well. When you read a script, and just you have to make sure you can be friends with the director.
The same way. Yeah.
Also, you have to hang out. You're going to hang out the whole time, so you got to know that you can get on with them. And it's all, to me, it's about taste. It's like about, anyway.
No, that's true. Yeah, I think that's interesting because I know that we have on occasion worked with a production designer that has their own taste, and the director had their own taste. And so things would be going along, and there would be these little things kept being put into the set that didn't really work with the overall thought of the director, but that need to put their own mark, I guess, on it. But in a way, if you work with the director from the beginning, you are putting your mark on it. You're coming together in common, and that's your mark, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly with Chris, what I loved about working with Chris Nolan is we go walking, we started on a film like smaller films, like the prestigious stuff, just going walking around LA, and he'd be playing a film in his head. He'd be playing his film, and I'd have read the script, and I'd be playing my film in my head, and he would slowly put his film in my head by just spending days walking around. And I got to know his film, and then I could help him find some more interest, or maybe look at something differently as a designer. Like, can we get past the first layer of the obvious designs, and can we get somewhere? Have we got enough time to get somewhere interesting and find out? I call it finding all the no's. And so I love, and then, as we did bigger and bigger films, we'd go around the world. You get on a plane, and we'd say, which way you want to go? You want to go, west or east? And we'd go Interstellar. We went to Morecambe Bay because we just wanted to look at a big body of water. But you just got to go and stand somewhere. You're not going to film there, but you just need to go and stand in the middle of a body of water to figure out, just talk about a water planet. Like, how can we logistically do that? And so I was sort of, as I said, I sort of privileged to do that for many years. And then I was, for years, the other films in between Chris Nolan films were difficult because I had to readjust my head to deal with different directors and respect their process. And I couldn't apply, as we all know, just because you've worked on these films, you can't really apply them to other films. You have to be a little bit sort of versatile, and you have to look at the people you're working with and be careful that you don't, like you were saying earlier, impose something that's incorrect. So that's kind of, anyway, that's,
what's the kind of, is there a major difference in your approach if you're doing something like Sweetie Barrett or Veronica Guerin, or a film like that, which is kind of based in a more reality, as opposed to sort of Interstellar? What's the difference in your approach, and what do you have to kind of consider most?
I always say I start in a room with a script and all the sort of the main scenes, and I try and find imagery or locations or anything to visually put up a film on the wall in that room to see if I can find a look. And I usually like to do that with the director himself, like the approach is like, so if you take Sweetie Barrett or Veronica Guerin, we know Veronica, that was a real story of Veronica Guerin. So we know that there's an enormous amount of research on where she lived, where she was murdered, and so you have to sort of respect that story. You have to be very careful and tread lightly. Whereas Sweetie Barrett was a sort of fictional clown in a circus. And it's like, sure, we could, you take what a traditional bad Irish circus is and say, well, would the audience believe if we did this a bit, if we, can we, the approach has to be different for every film. Like, can we whittle down to, to make, take only blues and reds or whatever it might be, or is what is that sort of, where is it based? It's this sort of bad traveling caravans, and what's the landscape in Ireland that's quite depressing? I don't want to be in that circus. It's the most depressing place ever. So you look for locations, and often location scouting is fantastic because it sort of just gives you ideas. And whether you use that or not, can you apply that? Sometimes I put something on the wall and go, oh no, it doesn't belong there. It's over there. That should be in that scene. But you've got to do this with the director. You've got to do that process with the director. And it's also good fun because you get a pair of scissors and a printer, and certainly not so much Chris, because he just likes to stand behind me and look at me working. It's like, leave me alone. Go write your script, And whereas Damien would get a pair, Damien Chazelle would print tons of stuff and get scissors and throw them up. And you also, I think, by making it not precious, certainly at that stage, I think as a designer, you allow everyone to have a voice. Like, you've got to make it inclusive. And so
also it creates something even bigger than what you originally had thought. I find it really exciting where you think you know the script so well, and then in prep, you're talking back and forth, and suddenly it grows into something much bigger and better and more right for the story because of the combination of the ideas. Because they might have 5 ideas, one of them is good. And if we put all the good ideas together, then wow.
No, 100%. And you want, during that process, the DP is always coming in too with good imagery. And it's like, I don't know, put it somewhere on the wall, just put it somewhere you like, to me, it's a jigsaw puzzle. And and the sort of creative part is seeing it, all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle as you finally build it. And you can see it as one place or one film or one story because you've got all the pieces in your head. And that, I think that's actually what Chris Nyland taught me. It's like, can you put that all in your head? Which is hard because he's got a bigger brain than me. So.
And how do you work with the DP?
They're in that room. I mean, the problem is they're not hired at that point, and so it's like, come on in. So whatever days you can get, it's like, okay, this is where the room's going. Please come and join us. Spend the day with us. Bring a computer. Here's a printer. Just be part of it. I think, a lot of the times people like Hoyter would, want to be in there and listen. But then it's a very private space for Nolan. So It's in his house. It's where we always did everything, in his garage. It's now a fancy garage. Actually, it became a fancy garage and it became another house. But, I think the costume designer needs to come in. It's all HOD, special effects, visual effects. You want everyone to be part of learning the film. And I've obviously now moving into more fantasy, and I've always tried to apply that methodology to new directors I meet. And some of them don't want to. They have lots of things to do. To be stuck in a room with me might not be their priority.
But also, talking with the DP can be helpful to you too, because if they're never going to see the ceiling and you had this intricate ceiling planned, isn't it better to know it sooner rather than later? Or are you going to argue and say, well, there should be a low angle?
No,
because I like that ceiling.
I'll just lower the ceiling.
Okay.
Yeah, because the camera is the camera's brilliant, because it's like, so what if the ceiling's on your head at 7 foot? It doesn't. It still photographs really well. I mean, maybe the lighting doesn't work, but I mean, Wally Pfister was always like, he was like Captain Window. So it would be like, I mean, he's right. It's like, you got to make sure that window. I mean, again, it's like, the great thing about sets is like, sure, if the window's tucked into the corner, so you can get the light across to someone on a wall, that's fine. It doesn't really, it doesn't, just because architecture says it has to be 3 foot away from a corner structurally, it doesn't matter, because you frame it up in singular shots, or if you're moving, maybe you have to think a little harder. I mean, the joy, I think, of the camera is you can have a window on the inside. When you go outside, that window doesn't have to be there. Like, there's no, it's brilliant. I mean, there's no real rules. If you can get away with it, then
And
there's a few occasions we've done that.
Does the same hold true then when you're doing a period piece like Public Enemies or something, and you've done all this research on how it was, but if it would work better if it was slightly different, are you sticking by what the actual facts were, or are you flexible in changing something because it works better?
Oh, no, I'm completely flexible. When I do period films, I mean, you take The Prestige, it's like, if I ask you, when was electricity invented? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, sure, on Regent Street, it was invented before it was in, Truro. You know what I mean? So probably about 50 years. So I don't...
Yeah, 50 years. They've got it now, yeah.
So I don't believe... whatever, I mean, Dunkirk, we wanted a more modern train, because it was like, it didn't feel right having a sort of odd 30s British Rail train. We wanted it to feel, there's a simplicity, there's a modernism to that film. So we actually used a 50s train, because you've got to get into clean lines, like there's themes, like the mole is white and it's a road to nowhere. So you have to apply some of that cleanness to other things that would, you get criticism. Everyone says that's not the right train, and it's like, well, does it matter?
But it's the right story. Why aren't you focusing on the story?
That's interesting. I must ask you, just while you mentioned Dunkirk, the number of boats going to the beach. I mean, I was gratified to see there was one steam. What was it? A paddle steamer that was from Devon, which was actually true, which I was glad to see. But it seemed like there weren't enough boats. Now, I know practically you probably won't be able to get that many boats, but do you feel that it was compromised because you didn't use CG to extend the number of boats, or to put the number of people and equipment on the beach, which actually in historic photographs, the beach is actually trash. I mean, when they've left, it's covered in trash.
Yeah, I mean, I totally hear you. Like, do you put CG in. We were trying not to do CG because Chris needs to protect that IMAX footage, the native IMAX, and so we were trying to get enough boats. And the reality of that day is not all the boats showed up. And so,
filmmaking, yeah.
And I was running with the producer down to the Dunkirk canals, just with $500, saying, "Can you get out to sea to the Dutch barges?" And and so you're kind of like, it's like, "Can you go out to sea now?" And like get in the locks and get going. And we had a lot of boats there, and we were trying to do it in camera to get the feeling of. I mean, Chris always likes to do things in camera because you just get something that you don't expect on the day, whether it's weather or there's something there. So a lot of the ships, like a destroyer is 350 feet. So we had one French destroyer, and then we had sort of boats from all the way up through Rotterdam to Norway that came down, and we half-sized the windows. We built flattage around those boats to scale them, to make them look bigger. So all the windows we did half size, we brought them in half distance, and we put the guns half size. So we built all these additions to the ship so they'd look like other destroyers trying to get onto the mole. So we just, the task was to try and get that event in camera by every method we knew at that point. And yeah, it probably feels like there's not enough stuff on the beach. I mean, the army was a series of we had 3,000 cutouts and painted cutouts of scenic cutouts of British troops, and which were actually all just photographs in costume of my scenic department. We just hand painted them. So I could extend Chris's army by 3,000 people, which was 3,000 extras. We didn't have a lot of money. We were making it. I mean, for under 100, so try and launch that with the planes. All the planes were flying miniatures, so we had 17-foot Heinkel miniatures, remote control. We had everything. We had a whole sort of remote control flying team. So when you're flying the Heinkels and you're behind them in a camera ship, you've got a remote control guy flying the Heinkels. So we had a miniature airport, so they take off and they come in, and then you get your boat in place, so they could fly over the boats. And then, so the complexity, I mean, it was complex. I mean, here's the reality of Dunkirk, because Chris phoned me. He was on holiday with his family, and he said, any chance, because I live in New York, he said, can you get on a plane, come meet me? And it's like, sure, where are you? And he goes, I'm in Dunkirk. It's like, really? Well, I think I know what we're doing. And so, I flew over there, and he was disguised in a baseball hat and a pair of shorts. And we walked the 18 kilometers of the entire beach. And then you sort of come to the realization that everything you imagine happened on that beach. There are empty spots. There were crazy spots. So Dunkirk is a colossal stretch of beach. But the way it's always been portrayed is that little area near the mall, which was bombed to hell. So, yeah, I mean, it depends on, I mean, again, Roger, you're probably coming from a visual point of view. It's like, I want to see more.
Yeah. No, I just wonder how much is practical and how much is an aesthetic choice that, that the end sequence of just flying over the beach, this endless empty beach, was that an aesthetic choice?
Or a necessary choice?
Yeah.
I think it's aesthetic. I think it's funny, we went there and we thought, we saw the little sort of small seaside town that has 3 stories, and we sort of, and then we looked at that and we said, we can do a lot of the chase stuff here, and that's going to look good. And we run out to the beach. And then as we sort of discovered the film, it's like, I don't want to see the seaside stuff. I want to see the industrial beach, which is just a giant flat concrete space where you see them give up and go swimming in the sea, and where the fishing boat is. It's kind of a hopeless place, and it's a hopeless situation. And so I think we sort of discovered we didn't really want the French army shooting their horses. We needed a sort of a modernism to it.
Yeah.
And
There's a slight more sort of surreal quality to it because it's kind of minimalistic. I mean, so that's why I'm saying I wondered how much was aesthetic choice.
well, I mean, I got really into Red Desert when I was.
Right, yeah. There you go.
And so I tried to. So the scene where we had to land the Spitfire, and Tom Hardy he kicks it. You realize he's getting arrested. There's all this industry behind. So I was desperately, and it used to blow all its steam at certain times of the day. And it's like, it's like, but the sun was going down. It's like, just hold on, we're going to get a Red Desert steam plume if we just wait a second. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It became something else as we did it. So,
yeah. When you're discussing with a director a film and the film sort of becoming visualized in your heads, when do the practical problems really start to affect the aesthetic choices? I'm thinking now of, say, Interstellar. There were so many kind of complex sequences in that film. I wonder how that was approached and developed.
yeah, I mean, as you sort of get into a design career, you have to try and leave your practical head behind because it's going to hurt your creative choices. And you have to think, I know everyone's saying this is impossible, but I mustn't listen to that. And yeah, so I've got to answer your question about the practical concerns I try and leave behind. And I know there's a solution because I have a very good crew. And I know if we sit and look at a problem rather than giving up, I think you can always find a solution by concentrating, which I've sort of only really just discovered recently, if I was honest. So, but yeah, practical concerns of Interstellar, the body of water. Well, you've got, first of all, we've got to design a spaceship. The Ranger, and then we have to do all this practical sort of engineering of the film, like all these ships, all the docking sequences, where Man is, where Dr. Mann is, like where are all these places? So you have to sort of build, you have to do two things really. You have to design ships and then look at landscapes, because we know we're going to want to shoot in landscapes, and we know we have to find a water planet. And we know we have to put in the Ranger into the water, the full-size Ranger, so we can go in and out of that with actors. And the reason we have to do all of that for real in the body of water is because the wave is digital. And so we have to do this blend of digital and real. And if we can get enough of it real, the editor can really cut it together in a way that we take our mind off the CG. And so the body of water was by accident. We tend to always go to Iceland because of Batman Begins first on our world tours. And so we know we're going to find the ice planet there. That we know. And the question is practical. Production want us to find as many locations in the same place as possible so you can then run out to the different locations. The money wants us to do that. And so again, I was wandering around with my Icelandic art director, Eddie, who knows every farmer on the south coast there. And he was just asking the farmers, is there an endless body of water anywhere that we can drive around in? Some farmers said, yeah, if you go down there 5 miles, there's a glacier wash. And so Eddie found this glacier wash, and he sent me all these photos of him driving a car around, because it was only 2 foot deep and it was gravel, and he was just driving around, and there's as far as you can see with beautiful horizons. It was like going to Chile or something, so.
Wow.
But in Iceland. And so it was like, well, there you go. We've got an ice planet and a water planet. The logistics are, we got to cut a road 5 miles to get down there, and the water is freezing. So it's glacier runoff. So the crew aren't going to be happy. And then we're also going on a glacier where it's hard to work on glaciers. So, and we're putting Man's pod into the glacier. We're going to build it on site, not the interior. You start by certainly for Nolan films, you start by assuming we're going to do it all. And then when you butt up against something that you can't do, then you call in VFX or special effects, or you break it out and say, okay, we're going to do that separately, and we're going to push that to, wherever it is, the studio, and we're going to pick that up there. We're going to take those pieces and you sort of plot the scene together with some help of the studio. And this sort of goes back to looking at your crew and saying, well, are these people okay with going up a glacier? Because some people don't want to do that. And so when I'm doing a lot of fantasy musicals of all things. I can't take a musical 300 dancers up a glacier. So you have to look at it. It's like, well, I can't. I can barely take them to Norfolk to a tulip field, so so you have to, and they need 300 trailers, and you can't, so you have to, if you're going up a glacier, you got to size down your crew to sort of essential, and it's hard. And I would say I'm glad I was a younger man back then.
Aren't we all? The things we did.
So how about the opening sequence? I was intrigued about the choices for that and the location for that.
Of Interstellar?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the farmhouse.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry, I was thinking, I can't remember that. No, it's okay. I'm there. I'm with you. The farmhouse, yeah. Well, here's the thing about, okay, we're set 50 years approximately. It's never really discussed in the future. So design-wise, like, do you do a farmhouse of the future, or
right?
And then when you look at that, it's like, well, that the audience are just going to bounce off that. It's going to have like solar panels and things and lots of glass and modernism in some way. Whereas really, we needed to again, I was walking up in Canada a lot with Chris. We go walking when we walk all day. It's like, no, that's not going to work. So we discussed these things. We needed a slice of sort of Andrew Wyeth and Americana. And for me, I was saying, yeah, because there's no place like home, and you're giving up something, story-wise. So we have to do an Americana image in the cornfields. It's days of heaven, or, you know what I mean? We have to put this, so there's a loss. So you design a farmhouse, and it really is sort of the white farmhouse with the porch and the fields of corn. And I knew we were going to build the farmhouse because the landscape is everything, and you got the Rockies. So we went scouting for that beautiful sort of rolling hills with the Rockies in the background. The reason we go wandering is, you meet the farmer and you ask the farmer if he was going to build a house, where would he build it? What's the most beautiful spot he's ever seen? He's lived there all his life. So, so these things develop because you spend time in a place. And then the practical side of that was the corn. There was no corn in the most beautiful space. So so it was like, I remember talking to the farmer with Chris. It's like, can you go corn this far north?
And did you plant corn?
Yeah, we planted 500 acres of corn. And when I say we, I mean that farmer did. He said, and we had, obviously, we're practical people, and so we had a backup cornfields. It's further south in case the corn didn't grow, because it didn't look great.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we planted that field, and the farmer was saying, it might fail. So I put the house on blocks. So if the corn only got to a certain height, or if it did go to 8 foot, I could lift and lower the house.
Wow.
Because it was like, we have to get the porch and we have to see over the cornfields. These are important. Otherwise, why be here? So we grew it, and I was very, very worried because it was about, 6 inches, about 4 weeks away from the shoot.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, it's going to fail. And then the farmer came to me. It grew to 6 foot, and he came to me and he said, wow, the corn failed. And I was like, what do you mean it failed? He goes, well, 6 foot is a failure. And it's like,
Wow.
And it was like, no.
Farmer term.
Yeah. It's like, you could have told me that 3 months ago. Because if it had gone to 8 feet, I would have had to lift the house up and then build a bigger, it would have created other problems.
Wow.
So
it must be also, that's an enormous risk, just because the film schedule, I mean, films that size are notorious for slipping schedules and stuff. I mean, you had to shoot that within a certain couple of weeks of window, I'd have shot.
Well, it comes back to luck, doesn't it?
Yeah. But then you did the same thing on Wicked, right? I believe you planted 9 million tulips or something insane.
Yeah, I that was a harder thing because I'm convincing.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew we could do it, and when we found the tulip farmer, I knew we could do it. I was very confident. I needed to put it into Norfolk because I needed flat landscape with no trees, because Aussian trees are circular. So I need nothing. I need big Norfolk skies that, are pinkish. There are lots of themes here. You know what I mean? And you want that landscape. Yeah. And when you go to the wash, it's like this sort of thin nothingness. And you focus on the rows of color. And then the other theme, the reason we picked tulips is because it's all the colors of the rainbow, So John Chu, who's brilliant, was like, I'd love to grow the tulips, but I was alone. He had enough problems. I was trying to convince a table of 20 people that growing tulips was a sensible, rather than CGI. And there's plenty of CGI tulips in the film, but let's get real ones as well. And they were looking at me like, I didn't have Chris Nolan next to me who would say, yes, of course we're planting the tulips. They're all saying, we're never going to plant the tulips. So you are alone. But I remember sitting in that room thinking, none of you have to do it. I'm the only one who has to do it. So,
so what's the problem?
Yeah, it's on me, and then luckily Donna Langley came in, and I was presenting to her, who I know her from several other films, and she looked at the tulips. She says, I love tulips. And it was like, me too. I said, I want to grow those. And she said, what a great idea. It'd be really nice not to have CG tulips in the film.
Oh, brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah. But were you sweating up to the day of the shoot?
But also, don't you only have a limited amount of shoot time? Because tulips, when they go off when they get old.
Yeah, we were okay because we put, the way we got around that is I knew Munchkin Land, it was actually John's idea. We had, all these dancers from Munchkin Land, so I knew it had to be a back lot. And so John actually said, well, if we sink it in the field, then we can have embankment. We don't need to see it in the tulip fields of Norfolk. So we can do all the scenes leading up to it in Norfolk with second unit. Then if we sink the field, the embankments of the Munchkin Land will become 35-foot practical sykes, and we have to then just grow a separate amount of tulips to put on those embankments. So we then had 600,000 in a greenhouse for these set.
Oh my God.
I mean, but
the actual tulip field then was a sort of smaller shoot in on location, and the bulk of the film and the scene was done on a backdrop.
Yeah, well, in a field in Tring.
Right.
And so, but it was like, it was great. I mean, John was like, yeah, that's a great idea. It's like, yeah, of course, we sink it and we have these embankments. We have backings, 360 backings, and we're building giant ramps. And it allows the crew and all the dancers, you've got to sit them in a comfortable backlot. And with dancers, they have to be protected. Otherwise, it's just, you're doing these in one take. That's what I mean. You have to look at what you're doing. It's a big learning lesson for me doing musicals. It's like, oh, yeah, you have to think about them as old MGM backlots. So, yeah, it kind of all worked out through sort of push and pull. And, I think it's this blend. And then Pablo, who's the VFX supervisor, blended the running into the, he had to cross from our practical set embankment to the field. So he stitched it together. And the joy of those stitches are we have real photographic material for him to know what it looks like. So when he's creating it, there's the photographic information of both the field and the set that he can then link. And I think that's worth the effort, so.
But was it fun doing a musical that wasn't really based in reality, so to speak? Was that fun?
Even Interstellar in a way is based in reality.
It's slightly skewed, but
yeah, no, it's been a fantastic. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. I sort of got as I got older, I realized I needed new challenges, and I had to open a door into fantasy. I wanted to try doing more practical sets in fantasy, in that fantasy world building area. Chris is going on his march. He was, you can see at Dunkirk, and then you can see not so much Tenet, but Oppenheimer. You can see where he's heading, and I really felt I had to try something new, because you've only got so many years in films, and so and I'd done Greatest Showman sort of semi-accidentally, which I really enjoyed. I never thought I'd ever do a musical, and then I did Wonka, and then when Wicked came up, it was like, okay, it's sort of unbelievable to be asked to design Oz, and it's like, and so that it opened a new door, and I really glad I stepped through it. But it's been a lot of lessons learned from me about the needs of a crew who make musicals, so.
Yeah. And you're also creating this fantasy that's based on such a well-loved movie where, pretty much everyone has seen the original Wizard of Oz. So that's your jumping off place, but you're also making something completely different. So how did you juggle the two?
I think Wicked was, it was like I was saying earlier, it's to try and push through. There's all the obvious and the no's. It's very hard design-wise because so much has been done. Like, if you look at Munchkin Village, it's like you got to do a Munchkin Land, and you don't want it to be like the Hobbits. You don't want it to be, like a Alpine Village. There's so many potholes on the design road that you have to reach. You have to reach as far as you can into something new, which is very difficult. Luckily, I work with my wife as well, and she's my conceptual illustrator. So we sit together and we go, boring. It's like, that's been done. That looks like a Swiss village. That looks like, so Munchkin Land. So once you sort of, the naivety of going into it, thinking, oh, it's going to be wonderful, and it's Oz, is difficult, because you have to sort of get into the Emerald City too. You have to go in there, and you have to make sure that audience doesn't question it. And I think, and they concentrate on the narrative, and they're looking at the story and the film, and they're not looking at what something they don't believe in. Like Emerald City has to be something they haven't seen before. Or I think the other thing we learned a lot about is tapping into some kind of nostalgia, that you can give people something that sort of puts one foot back in that camp that then people are happy proceeding with.
Yes, because they can feel really betrayed if you take a favorite and you don't keep that one foot in the past, but it's something completely different, and then they'll become angry because, wait, you've just ruined it. But I thought you did a really good job of, I believed I was back in Oz, but I also believed I was in a new experience, and it kept me interested. So,
I'm glad,
well done.
Because I love that film. John Chu, when you go on one short day, when you land into Emerald City and you go to Wizardmania, and there's that insane dance around the fountain, I think John Chu is like just an amazing director, that he could put that together, because it's such dance fantasy, and then there's so much going on, and then boom, you're inside the Great Hall, and it's just an intimidation palace, so there's I always say, I think it took all the other films I've ever done to be able to make Wicked.
Yeah. Well, you said that you had to make adjustments because it was a lot of choreography and dancing. What were some of those adjustments? Was it where things were so the number could play out without falling into the fountain? And was it soft material so there wouldn't be clapping,
Yeah.
from the feet? What?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the surfaces dancers need. I mean, ideally they would want a flat sprung floor, but you can't do that because it just looks rubbish. And so you have to find materials, and you have to find different ways of doing it. Like I love the idea of cobble, so we, at night we get light texture on it that would reflect if we varnish them, but we ended up having to silicone fill all the joints to get them flat, and so they could dance on them. So, and it was like lots of testing and lots of great art directors. I mean, a wonderful art department and construction department who we could do in the workshops. We could test and test and test. And,
And when they created the choreography, did you create the set first so they were choreographing around the elements in the set, or did you have to design around the choreography?
Well, I think it was a sort of a joint thing. So we come up with a design in the art department, build giant white card models of the set, and then 3D print figures that they could place around the entire set. And then, and they can move them around. And then I just leave them in the big room. Like I leave them all the models, all the people, so everyone could go in there. And the director, we've been through those models endlessly with the DP and the director anyway. But everyone else could go around and move people around and come up with ideas. Now, some people still don't really understand physical space, even in a foam core model. So then I'd peg out the whole set on site or on a sound stage, and we would allow everyone to sit with that for a while. Sometimes I'd need to put plywood walls up so they could understand the movement, the camera movement, the dancers, where people need, and we keep that all flexible because things would need to change. The lighting, the set dressing would have to move. Sometimes it needed mechanical effects in it. So that would all be sort of fluid in a very plywood changeable space. And then because these sets were big and we have what I call the art direction portion, which is the build portion, and sometimes it can be up to 15, 16 weeks on the back lots. It was like everyone needs to come down and spend time with us. It's really important that everyone comes, and even on a Saturday, just come and walk the space as we're building it. Because we could change it. We've got the best construction crew ever, and we can manipulate and change it. If it doesn't work or you've changed the dance, which is inevitable, that sort of sculptural period of the build, you can change the set. You can make it better. You can make it work for everyone. And, so we need lighting cranes in there. So I needed the gaffer would have to say, I need to cut a big hole in the back of the set because we've got to remove the backside of the library. And then it's like, that's fine. We know what the library is. So Pablo that's where we should be using visual effects, is to take out the crane, So, it's very much, I'd say Wicked more than nearly every film I've done. It was all HODs everyone was pulling their weight. We had water sets. Shiz was a water tank, which I'd learned about on Hook because they leak. So,
so you weren't surprised.
Yeah, this one leaked. But yeah, I think, you guys know, it's like you have to be flexible and fluid, and that's why you have to leave your practical head a little bit away, because you can't let it get in. You can't get upset about change, because that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And just because you built it doesn't mean you can't rip a bit off.
That's actually a really good point, because it's hard to learn that, because you put so much into creating your part. And then when it needs to change, it oftentimes needs to change for a very good reason, but it's hard to let it go. It's like, wait, why didn't you tell me before? And wait, this is good. It's a good thing to learn, I think.
Yeah, film doesn't work. It's not like putting up a building. It's like, it doesn't work like that. It's like, it's absolute chaos. And then
Yeah. And then you're done.
Yeah.
How do you? I don't know how big a crew you have, but so how big a crew did you have, and how do you maintain an overall aesthetic when you've got so many people involved? And it's, I mean, almost when you look at something like Interstellar or Dunkirk or The First Man or something, the look of it is quite kind of clear. It's sort of like less is more kind of philosophy. But something like Wicked or Wonka, it's like kind of
More
is more.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like an enormous amount of stuff in the frame and the details. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you have it maintain a controlled kind of look over the whole thing?
I think it's sort of instincts to know where you have to be at the right time.
Yeah.
When I did Public Enemies, I learned an important lesson from Michael Mann. We built this one set. He looked at something way up in the ceiling and he said, "Are you happy with that?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he immediately found it the minute he walked on set. And I said, and he goes, "How come you didn't do it?" And it's like, you know what? I don't know. It's been bugging me for about a month. And
Oh, wow. Wow.
and he's bang on. And it's like, you realize you have that instinct. You just have to sort of listen and figure out where to be. Which, like, I know where the painters are at. I know where the mold shop. I mean, I have a lot of very good art directors. Rod, who you know from being
Great.
one of the best. And so you have people you trust, like Rod. I have a scenic painter that's been with me since Batman Begins. I trust to fix. I have these fixers everywhere. And then it's the gaps in between I have to get to where I don't have those people.
Right.
And so, I mean, I've sort of assembled this crew over 20 years. I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same, where I like have an Icelandic art director. We travel, and you just have people you trust, because you have to know that you don't want to walk into something. But it's difficult because you've got the shoot crew. When you're shooting, I've got to be on set for the first couple of hours, and I've got to get away once you turn over. And then I've got to get around the shops. It's the construction shops that are key, because, we draw everything in the art department and we model it up, but we can change it in the construction shops. When we sculpt stuff, it's like, no, that's wrong. Let's change that. So it's about getting around all the shops. And then you've, of course, got set deck. So you need a good set decorator and you need a strong prop master. I mean, we had, at one point, we were running like 1,000 construction crew on 3 back lots. And it gets tricky, because you cannot mess up, because your payroll is too big. So your construction manager, you can only run that many people for so long, otherwise you're going to get fired. So
This is the bottom line. Wow. I don't think I've seen it, but you did a film called The Lake House early on, which you actually built a house on a lake in the right location, and then it was knocked down after finished shooting, which I looked at pictures of the house and thought, it's a really nice house. Do you ever get depressed when you see your sets destroyed afterwards?
After all that work?
Not at all. I'm like, I walk away, and once we wrap, it's like, you wrap camera, and the Lake House was very interesting, because the film, it was about, an architect who built this glass house, and his son was the architect had died, and the son had this sort of distant relationship with him, a bad relationship, but he had this sort of love affair through the mailbox, which we leave alone for now. But, my dad was an architect, and we lived in a glass house. So he was a modernist. And so it really intrigued me. And it's like, I never really liked the glass house modernist design. So I sort of mixed it with, the Regency glass houses like Kew Gardens, tried to put decoration into it. So I was really sort of, for me, it was like, I'm going to build a glass house on a lake. The problem with that was, I mean, my argument to the producers was, the film's called The Lake House. We have the whole film here. And I need to build this house, because we can't just have a cabin by the lake. It's not the story. It doesn't serve the story. So I have to spend all of my budget building a glass house, and I can do the rest on location in Chicago. I'm in Chicago, tons of locations. We just have to do it all on location. And so I was in quite a big argument with the producers about spending 90% of my budget on one set, which they finally agreed to because it's the name of the film. But those were the sort of struggles of that film. You have to, for me, we had to define that lake house properly. But big, again, we undertake these things and they're not easy. We're in a national forest. We have to get agreement. We dug out an area and let the lake and built the house where we put a dam up, a mud dam, and we built the house up, and then we took it down and let the water flood in around it. So, you need to sort of, you have to find people who are interested in figuring that out. So I say it like this is the bit I really enjoy. It's like, this is a bit, it's like, because it's going to make the film better. And
What do you find now? Do you find more recently you get more pressure to do a film like that, say in a volume, build a house within an LED volume and have the whole background as a pre-shot exterior?
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't work that often, Roger. No, I mean, I don't agree. I know what volume. I mean, in First Man, we with Linus, the great Linus.
Yeah.
Linus brought in the LED screen, which was phenomenal. I don't think you can. For me, what I learned from Linus is like, you need a screen, a window. You need something in its way. Or if you're getting
frame,
and it's the best back projection, front projection I've ever had in my life. So doing miniatures on them, during Gemini, we do a camera mount on the Gemini, because then you have the surface of the Gemini and the camera's moving with it, and then the background you're getting it out of your sort of personal frame when you're watching the sequence. So I don't believe in the volume beyond it being front projection, essentially. Now, that's me, but, lots of people love it. I love the LED screens. I mean, they're incredibly, and also they light everything. I mean, on Interstellar, we only had projectors. So we had, we had 4 and 2K projectors, and we had to then put another projector projecting the same image back into the cockpit to get the reflections on the glass of the helmet. So the sort of trying to coordinate projectors is, it's like, discovering a wheel is round, So
Talk about on First Man that I was interested in the moon landing. I mean, how did you conceive doing that? I mean, it's obviously a challenge in every way. So can you just talk us about the process and how you ended up achieving that?
Sure. I mean, do you mean the actual landing on the moon or actually being on the moon?
The scene on the moon, being on it, really.
So, again, it started with Linus saying, I need the biggest light and I need it 200 feet up, so it's like, he's not wrong.
Okay.
It's like, that's okay. We're in Atlanta. I said, okay, so we're going to be outside. We know that. And there was a big push, as usual, around the production table to shoot in the parking lot, which we know we can't do either.
Right.
And then, we had Dean Egg at VFX, who are fantastic. So it was like, you know what? Unfortunately, Atlanta is covered in trees. So I just happened to be with a location manager saying, I don't suppose you've got a big white quarry anywhere, do you? And he said, yeah, we do actually. It's like, you could have mentioned that before. And because I tend to, as a designer, I tend to park things to one side that are like too complicated to start to figure out. Let's just sit on that. Let's not try and solve it. The difficult stuff usually is parked at the back end of the schedule because no one wants to deal with it. So so it's like, I just need to do that. And then he showed me the white quarry and it's like, this is great. This is again, it's like local people, location scouts, and the people who ran the quarry. It's like, yeah, sure. And it's like, and I said, well, do you have any sort of do you have this sort of white, whatever it was? It wasn't chalk, it was some kind of granite. Do you have it as a fine dust? He says, yeah, that's the waste dust from the material, because they do the hardcore, they build for roads, So that's the byproduct. We don't know what to do with it. And he says, it's over here. So he showed me these mounds of this fine gray dust. And it's like, I don't suppose you could clear a 5-acre area and spread it around for me, could you? And he said, yes. And so we got that area, I forget, it was Tranquility Base or whatever. And we got the maps of the moon, and we started sculpting that area. And then to kill the trees, I asked him to mound up gray dirt to kill all the tree lines so we could get like 20, 30 feet. Just find some kind of mat line that then VFX could really work with without having to do a ton of rotoscoping. And then, of course, we were out in the quarry, so we could get that giant crane for lean us up. And then we just needed to build the lem, so we go in and out of it. And, the problems with this is, of course, the day we were prepping to shoot the night shoot, it snowed. It snowed on the moon.
Of course. Oh, no. Bending reality again.
Well, I know. Then we had to sort of sweep the snow off because, of course, no one's stopping. No one's going to stop for you. You know this, how it goes. We got, Ryan Gosling. We got to get heaters out there and melt the snow. Didn't snow a lot because it's Atlanta. And then the light goes up, and Linus puts this. Must have been like a 200K specially built light. It was like, boom. And it was like, that's the moon. Of course, the light blew halfway through the first night. So I had snow. Linus had some issues too.
And the light blowing out. Yeah.
Well, your great light in 1917, the fire, the drama of that is like, fascinates me. It's like, yeah. Because it makes it makes the place, and it's like, I think it's really important to have kind of ambition like that, so.
That was another one with the little cardboard set and the little figures and a light bulb in the middle, and then LEDs going overhead for the flares.
Yeah.
It's funny, we've come to this age and we're still playing with dolls.
Yeah, right. Yeah, really. Some of it's still fun, yeah. Okay. What do you think is a common mistake made by production designers, first-time production designers?
What should they avoid doing?
Well, you can't listen to too many people. You have to listen to the right people. and it's nerve-wracking. I mean, I definitely spent the first 20 years of my design career being a little bit, I was the young guy, and it's like you can get intimidated, and it takes a little while to find your thing, what you like, and how to find design, not as a singular set, but as a film. And so I would say it's hard to. The thing about making films as a designer, it's hard to get it all in your head, like to get the whole thing. It's very, very difficult to try and get across the whole picture and push it forward. That's why I don't have any hair. So
Well, this has been great. This has been really, really good. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. It's odd that we've never met. It's like so weird.
Yeah, the business is weird that way.
Yeah.
But you've done amazing work.
Well, likewise.
Really
it was such a joy to come on this.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
nice
Nathan.
to meet you both.
Fun.
If you'd like to sponsor the Team Deakins podcast, let us know at pod@teamdeakins.com. Thanks for listening. If you want more information and further discussion, check out the forums at www.rogerdeakins.com. Becoming a member is free, and you can ask follow-up questions there. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more new questions and topics. Also, check us out on Instagram at team.deakins. See you next time.